Hey everyone, my name's Adam Hawk. I teach in design and visual communications. I also teach digital fabrication classes. I'm currently teaching an intro to blacksmithing class in jewelry and metalsmithing. So my background is in computer arts, design, jewelry, metalsmithing, and blacksmithing. I've worked as a jeweler, full-time blacksmith at the National Ornamental Metal Museum, and an independent studio artist and designer. So I thought I'd start off by sharing something that's constantly influenced my work across my career, and that's my yearly trip with a group of artists to a remote island in the Gulf of Mexico. This island's called Horn Island. I've been going on the trip now for 20 years straight. So each year we hire someone with a boat to take us roughly 15 miles out into the ocean and leave us there for 2 weeks with no running water, cell phones, and most importantly, completely cut off from the rest of the world. So it becomes this really important time of solitude where eventually this switch flips in my head and I forget about all the stresses of the real world and I start living in the moment and I start seeing again. And things that I would typically overlook in everyday life become more significant and begin to provide inspiration. So it becomes this time of building my visual vocabulary, which is this ever-growing bank of ideas, thoughts, sketches, photographs that I can reference to use and compile new works. So I'm looking at light, color bouncing off of dunes at sunrise, the texture of barnacles on the surface of a piece of driftwood, patterns in the sand made by the wind blowing a blade of grass, a taper from a dolphin vertebrae, or the joints or segments of a crustacean's arm begin to influence forms and connection points in my sculpture. So here's a couple first works I completed when I first began blending my interest in both blacksmithing and design with influences I found in nature. So I would build these frames and internal forms using traditional blacksmithing techniques, and then completed them by painting the backgrounds to create an overall composition or wall sculpture. So I was thinking really graphic in style due to the artist I was looking at the time. In my time spent working in computer arts and design. However, as the work kind of evolved, I began to examine nuances within singular colors. And I was thinking a lot about, is the focus on the painting or the ironwork? And I wanted the focus to be a little bit more on the ironwork, but still use the painting component. So how could I use painting in a way that would elevate the ironwork? I discovered that subtle warm and cool whites painted alongside the 3D forms created almost a vibration in the iron, or intensified the iron. So in 2010-ish, I finally got my hands on a 3D printer, and I was able to start blending my interest in craft, design, and computer arts. So I was thinking a lot about how I could use the 3D modeling to my advantage and create new forms, some forms maybe that were more difficult to produce in traditional ways. As much as I enjoyed these new technologies, it's still really important as a maker to get my hands back onto the work. So I've continued to explore this way with other technologies. One of my most recent bodies of work, I'm combining traditional jewelry and enameling techniques with the CNC laser. And I found that this way of working really satisfies my many creative needs. So my needs to work digital as well as analog, fast and slow, as well as intuitively and planned out. So I started seeing this work kind of as a collaboration with machine or technology, where the technologies are kind of determining parameters or creating limitations for my designs, as well as physically creating some of the parts of my work. So, the outcomes can be unknown at times. So for example, in these, I'm kind of restricted to a flat surface when lasering. So by adding a slight distortion to my designs, I'm able to create the illusion of volume. With most of my work, I always tend to go back to nature for inspiration. So I've been looking at these marks made in the sand on the left for many, many years. It's something I've always really wanted to use or do something with, but I could never really figure out how to use them. And then one day it just kind of revealed itself. So it's really important to keep all of my sketchbooks and photos and always go back to them, because you never know when an old idea will finally become realized. So I thought I'd end with this slide. It's an example of not needing to travel to a remote location for weeks at a time. to find inspiration. I found that over the years, the more I practice, the easier it is for me to slip back into this way of thinking and observing. Nature is constantly providing inspiration all around us. And if you really look hard, it's available on short walks, bike rides, day trips to a park or a lake or a river.